tell you what, I do sort of forget how loud the intro music is actually, because I've turned my volume all the way up, so it's an absolute nightmare. But hello everybody, welcome to Fourth Tier Fever. Great to have you back again. So we're back for another week, another episode. We are once again joined by our three co-hosts, Keiron, Jake, and Luke. How are we, fellas?
Never better, my friend. I absolutely love that intro, It's got the really catchy music, and I think it's what everyone's there for. Good stuff.
Of course, one of the head boppers. Jake, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks. Been to one pre-season game so far. I've got another one tonight, so the season's coming around quick, so good to be back.
Fantastic, and you don't have to don the gloves this time either.
Good start.
Yeah. And we've got Luke. How are we?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, just happy to be back on, and yeah, that music from the intro's got me going. I'm vibing.
Yeah. When it comes to the next time, you probably won't see it, but we'll just start like head bopping because it's just sort of one of them. But we'll move away from that. So, first of all, welcome back. It's good to do another one of these again. Just want to say thank you for the response for the first episode. What we did, ranking the transfer business that had happened up until that. It really went well, and especially on YouTube, 50 odd subscribers and over 1.5k views. So thanks very much for that. It was sort of quite irritating at the end of that as well. Like, it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes later, Morecambe just go and decide to drop 15 players like it's confetti. So they're not in my good books at the moment. Neither is Derek Adams, but we'll get to him. So today is an interesting one. We've sort of seen something similar going around at the minute for what people are going to do. There was one in particular that took my eye. I cannot remember the account or the name it did it. But he sort of did a list of ranking League Two managers. He did it as like a 1 to 24. So we're going to be pretty much doing that. Instead of ranking them, we've got a tier list here. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, we've got a screen. We've got a tier list of all the 24 managers in League Two coming up this season, and we've got 5 categories. The top one being League One quality, the one that deserves to be managing in League One. We've got decent who does a very good job, but probably is not quite at the top echelons of League One just yet. Does a job. I think it pretty much speaks for itself. It just does a job, really. Meh, probably some of the ones that are a bit not sure about, maybe got something to prove, or the fact that maybe just that good. And then we've got unproven, in which a couple of them will be going there, safe to say, probably because they've not been at a job long, or they've had very little management experience. I don't know, but we're just somewhat going to go with the flow and see how it goes. We're going to have a conversation about all of them, and we're pretty much just going to come to a vote, and sort of like the one with the most votes, we'll whack them in that category. So yeah, I think we'll make a start. So we're going in all alphabetical order. I think Jake said he's the one that did this, so thank you very much for that. So we're going to start off with Johnny Jackson, the AFC Wimbledon gaffer. Now he's an interesting one. I think it was a solid season for AFC Wimbledon last time out. The foundations were definitely put in place to potentially push on this season. They have lost some big names in the summer, but they've also brought some decent ones in as well. His previous managerial career, likes of Charlton, did okay for a period, but it was quite hard at the time for a manager to really get a bit of consistency there. So I think he's an interesting. I think I'd like to see him another season. There's definitely something there at the moment. I definitely won't say he's League One quality. I won't put him there either. It's between decent and does a job. And to be quite honest, I do want to see him for another season, to see how he gets on. Because Wimbledon are sort of getting there, but they have lost some key players this season. And sort of see how they do this time out. For me, I'd probably put does a job. In all honesty, I'm not sure what you guys think, Keiron.
Yeah, I am very much kind of agreeing with you on most of the things you've said. I think it was, albeit, they lost their, I suppose you could say, star player during that season, halfway through it, and the way they adapted to it was all right. Yeah, a lot of criticism I hear from my FC Wimbledon fans is that Jackson doesn't overly change his lineups. He doesn't suit to kind of play against oppositions. But I suppose for the most part, you'd say maybe the position of Wimbledon's finish was satisfactory. I don't think it was anything to kind of say wow to, but you're not going to be disappointed at where they finished. I'd like to see how he also does get on for another year. I think, if he can kind of iron out the kind of concerns and stuff of not being too much of an adaptable manager, I think you can very much see him being put up towards the top ends. But I'd also be putting him in does a job.
Okay, yeah, Jake.
I'd have to agree and does a job. He's not really done anything that's been too impressive, but nothing's gone wrong for him yet. And I doubt anything will, because he's just a steady League Two manager, so he would be does a job for me.
Luke, we all know how much you love AFC Wimbledon. What do you think?
As much as I would love to put him in there, I don't think I can. No, I think does the job is honestly fair enough. Obviously, it's a bit different when we play them. It's not like a normal league game as such. And I mean, we saw two opposite ends of it last season. That first game, we destroyed them. The second game, obviously, they were much more compact, and they I don't know, they had a sort of resilience to them that they certainly didn't have the first time around. So I think he is sort of growing something there. And there is some sort of steady progression. So does the job for me, sounds right.
Yeah, good. And that's where we'll probably put him in. So Johnny Jackson in does the job. On to the next one. Now, you might have to help me. You might have to help me with some of these because I cannot perfectly see well. Who's the one next to there?
Accrington's John Doolan.
That's John Doolan. So it was a thing with John Doolan. Like, I sort of knew like all of the gaffers' names other than John Doolan. Yeah, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. I think he probably does have to go in unproven. Had a little bit of the second half of this. Did he have the second half of the season when I think so, when he had when they got rid of John Coleman, which was still I think the way he was treated still was a farce. But there's certainly some question marks over him in how Accrington and he can get on this season. The summer's been meh. I think it's fair to say there's a couple of decent names, but I mean, ultimately he's not had a lot of managerial experience, and he does sort of need to prove a point in a sense. So I think the upcoming season will probably have a closer look what he's all about. But I can't really put anywhere else other than improving, to be honest.
Yeah, I also can't really put him in anything other than improving. I believe it was from February up until the end of the season that he ended up taking charge. I believe his first game, if I'm not mistaken, was a heavy defeat to that of Wrexham. But I think what he did was, I suppose he stabilised what was kind of a potentially decline in form and whatnot, but it almost fit that description of what Accrington's season was, which was inconsistent. But, he pulled out a good few strings of results. I believe there was one period where he won, 2 out of his 3 and he drew the other ones. I feel like there's definitely something about him, and I feel like if you're going to go into a transition period, as Accrington will, and this summer's been, I'd probably say, towards one of the lower ends, especially with those departures. Whether you question whether you want a newer kind of manager or an experienced one to almost be that like-to-like replacement's always a question, but no, I don't think you can really put him at the minute in anything other than unproven. He hasn't really had, any chance to prove himself, and he hasn't even had a transfer window up until now.
Yeah, Jay?
Yeah, I agree with both of you. He probably has to be an unproven. Like Keiron touched on, they're outgoing to heavy, and for an unproven manager, that could be a really difficult job. So it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on next season, because they had a heavy departure list and there's not been too many incomings of noticeable yet. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on.
Absolutely. I think you mentioned the outgoings there. One of them is Tommy Leiter, Luke's side, MK Dons. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been said already. I think it has to be unproven. Not much time in a job, and I think the job he's got especially is, it's a difficult one, as you've already said with the departure list. I think even if he struggles that first season, it's I'd still be saying unproven, because I think there are certainly easier jobs to have with other league clubs, I think. But I think he's got a tough time.
Yeah, cool. Pretty reasonable responses from that one for John Dooley going in unproven. Right, on to the next one. We've now got a Barrow's Stephen Clements. Now, Stephen Clements recently in at Barrow following his departure from Gillingham for his first, I think it was his first proper managerial job, in which they missed out on the playoffs, and Gillingham decided that they'll look to go in other direction. Mark Bonner, in which we'll get onto in a little bit later. But he's now gone to Barrow after replacing Pete Wild, who left the club not so long ago. I don't know, in all honesty. I think this is another one in which I think needs another season, I think, to see what he can do. But he's somewhat not as unproven as maybe someone like Dooley. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, actually. I think there's maybe something there, but I think it's sort of hard to tell with, because he somewhat didn't really set the league alight at Gills. I don't know. I feel like putting him in there is harsh, but I also do feel like does a job is probably a little bit of a step up. I'm going to go unproven again. I just think, and I need to see more from him. I need to see another year, see how he gets on at Barrow, and then we'll somewhat make a judgment. I'm not sure what you think, but it's a tough one. I just think Mary's is slightly harsh, and I think does a job is maybe a little bit of a step up. I definitely won't put him any higher than that. Yeah, I'm torn. Not sure what you think.
Yeah, I'm also incredibly torn. I think the term of obviously not upsetting the world alike with Gills kind of summarizes his time, but he kept that solid defensive unit that we had known under Neil Harris, but couldn't quite, I suppose, find the kind of way to unlock the attack and make sure things kind of worked in that department. I feel like if Mayor was named something else, I do feel that would be more of a fitting tier, but I feel like that is just out of the name of it. It is quite harsh. But he's not unproven in the way that I suppose he only had that kind of half a season and whatnot. But at the same time, I feel he did probably better than what Doolan would have done, and it is gonna be interesting to see how he adapts to Barrow, because that's not an easy job either by any stretch. The departures that they've had and everything else in between. So it's not going to be an easy job for him to go into either, especially for a first full season. If we were basing this obviously off a current job, you'd have to put him into unproven. And I think off of what he did with Gillingham, it wasn't overly inspiring, but it also wasn't uninspiring. It was kind of middle of the park in that regard. So I almost feel it is a cop-out, but I feel like I also have to put him into unproven.
He was such a highly rated coach, and when he went to Gillingham, he didn't really set the world on fire, which was quite a surprise. And it wasn't an inspiring appointment by Barrow, especially replacing Pete Wild. I'd probably put him in there, but I do agree that would be slightly harsh.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a difficult one. This, I mean, he came into a Gillingham side that were already underperforming, had to try and turn them around, not easily done, and now coming into a Barrow team that again has had a bit of a struggle with the transfer window, and it's not easy. I think he's been around just long enough to go in there for me. It does come across as perhaps a little harsh, but he needs to have that sort of upward trajectory to suggest that he could go further, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to go for it, but yeah, I can sort of see the point where I just think he needs a little bit longer. But he's not as unproven as maybe someone like John Doolan. He's got a little bit about him. He's had a little bit of time there, and with the expectations of Gillingham, with the budget they've got, with the players they had, I think he probably should have done a lot more than what they had done, especially in terms of goal scoring. I know that their goal scoring issues have been a problem for a while, not just last season, but this. I don't know. I think it's more of a tough nut to crack. I don't know. I'm happy to go with Mayor, but it's sort of, yeah. I probably would say Mayor, but even that, I just think I think the term of Mayor is probably slightly harsh. But I do want to see how he does at Barrow this season. See, because Barrow's not an easy job. I think at the minute in a bit of a transition period. Losing Pete Wild, so we'll probably really see how he does this year. I mean, like I said, I'm happy to put him in Mayor, as much as it must just feel a little bit harsh, but it's not a staying on him by any way, because there's still plenty of time. He's still young in terms of being a manager, but I need to see more. But I feel that at our point he's actually not that unproven. Then maybe someone like John Doolan, maybe someone like Nelson Jardine, we'll see. But yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to do it as well. I think if there was a tier in between Meh and does a job, that he would fit perfectly into that, because I don't think you want to put in Meh and Meh as in, poor manager, doesn't really have a ceiling to him. If he does well with Barrow and, stays along, we could very much, come the end of this season, be putting him up towards decent and that kind of higher echelon of the list. But I think it's Meh in the way that, again, it was an uninspiring appointment in the way that it didn't quite fit expectation, I suppose. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does at Barrow, and I don't think it's anything against him. I feel like he's definitely got something as a coach about him.
Okay, we'll move on. We've now got Graham Alexander, the Bradford manager, a man that's been around. I think it's fair to say Salford, MK Dons, albeit briefly, and that's quite nice. I remember him at Scunthorpe as well. He was there for a while. I think you know what you're going to get with Graham Alexander. He's a safe pair of hands. He's probably not the most inspiring man in the world, but I think with a certain club, he does a job. I mean, he took Salford up, didn't he? And sort of made you a solid League Two club eventually. So he put the foundations in place, although I'm not sure how much are there now. But and Scunthorpe, I think I remember him at Scunthorpe harshly sacked because they was in the playoffs in League One when Peter Swan got rid of him. He's certainly not in there. that's for sure. I don't think he's League One quality either, and it's again between does a job and decent. I think the last couple of years, I do feel like he has something to prove with how it ended at MK. But he did have a very good last few games at Bradford, and Bradford just seems to me that could be the club that suits him. But there's so much going on at Bradford at the minute. He'll still probably end up like 13th. That's just not me taking the piss. It's the truth. But I don't know. He's done some decent stuff. I'd probably lean him just towards decent, only just because I do think there's something there with him. But I'm not sure what you think. Again, happy to put him that does a job. No lower than that though. Absolutely no way. He's better than that. But there's absolutely no way I put him in League One quality either. I'm leaning towards decent, just, but I'm not sure what you think.
We had Jackson, who we were in between decent and does a job, and we kind of leaned him towards does a job. Yeah, I agree, but I don't think you can put him into League One quality. I don't think he's kind of had that. Like we'll see certain managers on this list. They've got kind of history of getting promotions and all this other stuff, and those are the ones you can chuck into League One quality because they've proven that they can consistently do it in League Two. But Yeah, I don't think he's quite got that heritage yet in League Two to put him into League One quality. But I feel like if you're talking, League Two coaches, he is kind of towards that top end. But I'd also probably agree to just lean him towards decent because he got Bradford into a really good run of form, especially in that second half of the season. I do think went unnoticed. They went from 18th to just missing out on playoffs on the final day. So there's definitely something there with him, and he's definitely a project manager, if you want to call him that. But yeah, I don't think he's kind of got that experience to put him into League One quality yet. But yeah, decent for me as well.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. He'd probably be decent for me as well. You know what you're going to get from him. You know the football's not going to be exciting and enthralling, but you know you will get results, which is what everyone really wants. And I don't think he's League One quality yet, but I think he could be in the future.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm very biased just from the way that
I can't imagine he'll be under the same opinion.
Oh yeah, no, I was genuinely considering Meh at one point. It's only his form with Bradford towards the end that was like, okay, I can't really justify it. For me, it would be does a job. I mean, we started the last season with him, top of the league, but the downfall was so quick, and it felt like we sort of lost our identity under him. And yeah, for me, I don't think he really understood the assignment going on at Dons, but I can appreciate that he's done a decent job elsewhere. So I would have gone does a job, but I've been outvoted. So
yeah, I mean, I just think with Graham Alexandra, it never felt like the right fit from his appointment at MK. Would you think the same?
Oh yeah, no, it was. It was a bit. It was like last time when we came down a few seasons back. We went for someone like Paul Tisdale. Again, stylistically, totally different to what we normally go for. I think the idea was just get someone experienced in, get back out of the league, and then get back to playing our usual style of football. And evidently, that didn't work at all this time. So we decided to switch to what we know, and so far that's working relatively well. Aside from playoffs that we don't talk about.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, Luke's been outvoted, so Graham Alexander's going in decent. Yeah, he just does a job, and he's not been too bad at it, and I think his recent track history shows. Moving on to the next one, Bromley's Andy Woodman. Now, we've been a Grimsby fan. I think we've got something on Andy Woodman, so quite happily I put him in Meh. No, but seriously, I think I really like him. I think he's won promotion out of the National League. Bromley won the FA Trophy with Bromley beating Wrexham. He's definitely not going in unproven because at least he has been around. Moving is a step up now to him in the Football League. I think he'll be perfectly fine, to be honest. I've always said it. I think Bromley have the players to be a solid Football League side for a few years, and I think he's got potential to go higher. It's hard to say. It's hard to say because he hasn't had Football League experience just yet. Although I think if he thrives at Bromley, there'll be certainly some eyes on him. Let's say he's between decent or does a job for me, and it's another one in which I'm incredibly torn. I think for now does a job, but it's very high end. If he does really well, he probably would be decent. I'm just thinking the fact that he hasn't managed in the Football League yet. I think Bromley have the squad for it. They have the play style to be a staple Football League club. I just want to see it first. In fact, no, you know what? No, I'm going to put him decent. I think he's more up to that challenge. I think he deserves a shot at the Football League. If he does well there, I think League One quality 100%. But I'm not sure what you think.
Yeah, for me, I think I can't put him any higher personally than does a job, just out of the way that obviously he doesn't have that kind of managerial experience in this division. But if you are basing it off of obviously what we are doing being his managerial career, it is really impressive what he's done at Bromley, and he's stabilised them and made them over a number of seasons, a team pushing for promotion. And he finally ended up getting it. So I think that, for its own regard, would deserve that kind of decent justification. But for me, to put you into decent, for my own opinion, you need to have done something, relatively not substantial in the Football League, but you need to have that experience and at least, some credible experience. So for me, does a job now. However, if he keeps Bromley up, if he does very much what he did in the National League, stabilizes them and adapts to the challenges that the Football League holds, he's going to have that quality to go into decent and League One quality in the future, especially if, given how many people are putting Bromley to already go down and all this other stuff. I feel like if he keeps them up, he could easily justify him decent off of one season. But just out of the lack of experience in the Football League, I'm gonna have to put him in does a job for now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jay,
I agree. I'd probably put him in does a job too, because we put Crewe Alexandra in decent because of his League Two experience, and he's not got any so far yet, Andy Woodman. But he's always been linked with an EFL job, so he could definitely be decent or League One quality in the future. But right now, it's probably does a job.
Oh yeah, I think I'd agree. I think that does the job. It is fair. I mean, obviously, as has been alluded to already, he doesn't actually have any EFL experience, so in that sense, he is actually unproven. But at the same time, he's proven that he can get success with Bromley, and I think the way he's going, he is quite literally just doing the job. He's getting them up the football pyramid, and there is that sort of upward trajectory there that you need to see to keep a club progressing. So he's doing a job.
Yeah, I think Jake put it well, actually, the fact that Graham Alexander's in there, actually. I mean, I was leaning towards decent at one point, but I think that's just sort of swayed me. I think it's very high-end, does a job. I don't think it'll take a lot for him to go decent in the next few months. I honestly don't think that if Bromley can find a little bit going, I rate him that much as a manager, and I think Bromley suits him perfectly. But we'll see on him. So, I've clearly been about better. So, Andy Woodman in does a job. Moving on to the next one, Chesterfield, Paul Cook. Now, I'll be the first to say I am a big fan of Paul Cook. I think his experience speaks for itself. Promotion with Portsmouth, the job he did at Wigan, and a couple of others as well. I think the job at Ipswich might have stained him slightly, but he sort of had to rebuild with Chesterfield in the end. And although it's taken him a couple of years, he's eventually got there. And I say, I mean, they absolutely pissed it in the end. But his track record speaks for itself. His previous spell at Chesterfield was a success as well. For me, I mean, I think Chesterfield will be up there again next year. I think this will be the first one in, say, League One quality. I know that he didn't have the best of times at Ipswich, but I don't think that'll harm him to. I mean, he was a solid Championship manager. Never mind what he did in League Two, albeit at the time as well, under the circumstances that Wigan had as well. The job that he did in nearly clearing him out. I just like his voice as well when he does interviews. We've all heard the voice change where it goes and then goes and it's something like that. But no, I rate him massively. I personally put him League One quality. I think if he wanted a League One job, I think he'd quite easily get it. I think his track record for itself. I think he'll be fine in League Two with Chesterfield this year. Good pedigree, good manager.
I think the thing that I really like about him is you see it with certain managers. They have a job go wrong, and then you see a very steady decline. He's dropped a couple of divisions. He's done really, really well with a club that he already knows to a degree. He's got, what Graham Alexander has in that experience, but he's also got that higher end of promotion and whatnot. So for me, I don't think you can put him anywhere other than League One quality. Like you mentioned, he was a proven and decent Championship manager, let alone mentioning League Two. So I'd also agree in saying if he wanted a League One job tomorrow, we could probably get one just out of a out of that kind of pedigree he's had and what he's done in the most recent season, I think long term, if you look at his long term overall career, you put him towards that League One quality. And then even last season, off of just what he did and how convincingly he won promotion with Chesterfield, for me, it can't be anywhere else other than League One quality.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. If he was in League One, you wouldn't be surprised, and you'd still think that's probably a good appointment for a League One club. And for Chesterfield, they've got a really good manager there who should just get him promoted, and it wouldn't surprise anyone.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got experience. He's been there and done it in League Two numerous times. It can only really be League One quality. I'd be surprised if Chesterfield weren't up there again with him at the helm.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much about voted there. Also, just noticed before you do it, it's the third one. I've just noticed because I couldn't see that. That's actually Paul Simpson. Oh God, that's sorry, Carla. We'll get to him next. But no, Paul Cook, rightly so, going in League One quality. We will now go to Carlisle United and Paul Simpson. It's another one I like. Did very well the season at Carlisle, went up. I think sort of against all. I mean, you've always get those teams in League Two in which you sort of don't really expect it. And that season it was probably Carlisle compared to some of the teams that were in there. I remember a few predictions saying that they'd be lower half. I've seen some that probably even worse than that. So he did a brilliant job in keeping them up. In League One last season, not so much. So I think he's another one that's got something to prove this time round. Again, certainly not League One quality. I think last season's showing does show that. Carlisle had their takeover recently. They've got a good squad there. He's definitely not a mayor. Again, it's another tough one. Again, I'm leaning more towards high end does a job, but again, I don't know. Sorry, you might have to come back to me. I'm gonna have to think about this one. Yes.
I'm gonna say decent off of the merit of what he's done in League Two and what he did do with Carlisle. I mean, when you looked at the quality of the teams in the playoffs and the season that they did do it, incredibly kind of impressive. And I think the reality of when they went up, I don't think they expected to. I don't think they expected to get promotion. That's almost why it did fall flat. And you could almost tell that by the fact that, he was rock bottom of the league with Carlisle for near enough the entire season and wasn't sacked. In January, you almost said that he'd made signings in preparation of going down to League Two and making sure that they can bounce back and then make potentially, if they do go up this season, the season after, they can make that kind of adaptability and try and suit League One better, because I don't think they had that squad really. I don't think any manager, bar maybe one or two who kind of pull off those miracles, would have kept Carlisle up in that league. But I'd be putting him in decent off of what he's done in League Two, albeit it's not a massive amount and as a massive amount of heritage. He's got that under his belt, which I think for a League Two manager, you've got to put him towards that higher end for me.
I'd have to agree and put him in decent as well. He took over Carlisle towards the bottom of the table, and then 18 months later they got promoted, which no one really expected. So I wouldn't put him in does a job because that would be harsh. But like you said last season, justifies why you wouldn't put him in League One quality.
Well, yeah, I mean, Carlisle are backing their man. As you say, he very easily could have gone with the club coming straight back down. But I think with his experience as well, there's something to be said for that. And I think decent would be fair. Obviously, remains to be seen how they do this season. But I think decent would be fair enough.
Yeah, I think I'm just sort of more thinking back to that season in League Two where they did get promoted in the playoffs, beating Stockport. And no one expected it. I just think I do agree with pretty much all the points you're going for. And you have sort of swayed me into decent, but I can maybe see the argument why some might say does a job. It'll be interesting to see this year. I think there'll be a little bit more pressure on him this year now that they've got, these new owners that have come in. They've spent a little bit, especially in January. I think they were more preparing for life in League Two more than anything. But we'll see how he goes this year. But I do like Paul Simpson actually. Yeah, I'm outvoted anyway, so he'll go in decent. Moving on to the next one, we've got Cheltenham Town now, and Michael Flynn, someone that Keiron knows very well. Obviously enjoyed quite a little bit of success at Newport. I think it is probably fair to say, without not quite nailing promotion, came very close. Granted, on a couple of occasions, the FA Cup runs keeping Newport in the league. Had a very good spell at Newport, in which I can imagine he's well liked around those parts. But I mean, life after Newport has not exactly been the best. It didn't pull up any trees at Walsall. Started the season on fire at Swindon last season, but quickly petered out, and he was given a sack. He's now at Cheltenham, replacing Darryl Clark, who's gone to Barnsley this summer. Yeah, he's definitely not in League One quality, and he's definitely not indecent. I think he sort of have to rebuild what made him a success at Newport. And can I see it being with Cheltenham? I'll be honest, no. Cheltenham have been hit really hard this summer, and I honestly think they'll be in for it for this season. There's a temptation I could put him in Mare. There really is, but you can sort of see the argument for does a job as well. I'm not sure what you think. I think it's probably a fair argument for does a job actually, but I will not be surprised if some people put him there.
Yeah, I'm gonna say does a job. I don't think you can, as biased as I am, and as much as I love Michael Flynn, and as much as he will never have to buy a pint in Newport ever again after what he did at the club over the numerous years, and it's almost like when, we'll go a little bit later on the list with Danny when we go for the Cowleys. That you can't always backtrack and mention, oh, I did well at this club when it was a few seasons ago, and you've had appointments ever since. So, yeah, if I was entirely taking my bias, I'm putting him in decent, but I'm not putting him there just off of the fact that the Walsall job I never really thought fitted him. I never thought the players really suited his kind of football, and then I do suppose he got quite unfortunate at Swindon with the fact that obviously they had those ownership worries and whatnot. But at the same time, what he was known for at Newport was adapting and what was, really tight restrictions and kind of poor things going against him. So, I don't think he's meh, because I think he's done it all right, kind of when you would look at his entire career of the basis in League Two. It's obvious he's not League One quality. He albeit he got within, a potential penalty shootout that got drawn out by a minutes in one final, and then had a kind of a heartbreaking last minute defeat in the other one. You can't put him in League One quality because he's never really had that promotion, albeit he's been up there. If you were to take that job, if you were to only take Newport, you put him probably decent off of what he did compared to expectations. But the jobs ever since, I can't really put him anywhere other than does a job.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make. If what he did at Newport, you'd probably say decent, but his other two jobs just didn't go his way. So he'd have to be does a job, maybe even there, but probably does a job.
Yeah, I personally would have been leaning more towards Meh. It has now been, a good few seasons since he's really achieved anything, if we're being honest. I think he just needs to have that one good season, and I can't see that being with Cheltenham the way their window's gone so far, personally.
And that's the thing. I can totally see the argument for Meh, I think, for the last two jobs. He's at Cheltenham now, and I don't think it'll get much better. But it's an interesting one because it's sort of just going off sort of like sentiment a little bit with the job he did at Newport. There is a good manager in there. I think it's the right fit. I don't think he's particularly made the right decisions in where he's gone for other clubs. I can totally see the argument from there. But I'm going to put him in just a job. It's very close. I've been so tempted to put him in there, so tempted. But I do want to give him the slight benefit this time because there is something there. But if it doesn't go right at Cheltenham, honestly, I don't think it will. I'd like to see him prove me wrong. He probably will have to go in there in the future, but we'll see how he gets on there. But yeah, that was a tough one actually. Because it generally could have gone either way. Next up here is an interesting one. We've gone for Colchester United and Danny Cowley. Now, obviously, we all know the success he had at Lincoln City. Being a Grimsby Town fan, however, I am not best fond of Danny Cowley. I think he's a prick. But he cannot disparage the job there. 2 promotions to League One, that FA Cup run. Incredible achievements, and they've set it up well for life in League One. He put some excellent foundations in place for them to be a staple League One club as they are, and very nearly made the Championship. I mean, the one where they lost the playoff final when Michael Upton was there, and just missing out on the playoffs last season. But life since Lincoln hasn't gone entirely the best for Danny Cowley. Huddersfield, he came in to do a job, and that was to keep him up, and he did that. I think he was harshly sacked for it. I think he deserved another year because he pretty much just came in and, did a job. He kept him in the Championship. So I think he was harshly sacked there. Portsmouth, I think there was pressure there of them being, and I don't think he sort of lived up to that at all. Sort of how they wanted to do it, and results prove that in the end. Now at Colchester. Now, if you've seen Colchester's recruitment this summer, it looks fantastic. By the way. Especially this morning with Hangen. I think they've got a former Tranmere defender. Is it Simeo there as on trial? I mean, Jack Payne, we know, but I mean, we discussed Colchester's transfer business in the last episode, if you want to see that. But he also did what he needed to do this year, and last year even, and that was keep him up just about. It wasn't straightforward by any means, but they did enough in the end. He's definitely not there. He's definitely not does a job. I think he's much better than that. It's between League One quality and decent for me. I think he's high end decent. I think he needs. Again, I think he's another one that sort of does need to find his feet again a little bit. I'm not sure what you think.
No, yeah, I'd agree with like I said when talking about Michael Flynn. You can't obviously live on the really good job he did at Lincoln forever because football's such a fast moving game, and as much as it's nice to have that reputation, I'd imagine more employers look at what you've done recently, and obviously, like we mentioned, Huddersfield. I mean, I'd agree in saying he got harshly sacked. I don't think he deserved it. It almost felt like that quota was to keep them up. He did it, but sacked it regardless. And obviously they've now come down in hindsight. You then say Danny Cowley probably did a good job. Portsmouth, I mean, it takes a special manager to really get the best, get the best out of that club, especially when they were in League One, pondering for 7 seasons or so. It was a good duration of time, but yeah, I think it's the reason that you put Michael Flynn potentially and does a job or meh instead of decent off of what he did at Newport. If you're talking about what he did at Lincoln, top end League One quality, if not the best manager in this division. But off the fact the jobs haven't went swimmingly, ever since, I think you've got to just drop him down to decent. But it wouldn't take much to put him back up to League One quality.
Yeah, I think it's just the fact that his spell at Lincoln was quite a while ago now. It's the same with Michael Flynn, but I think obviously Cowley had a little bit more pedigree with the FA Cup runs. I mean, Newport had FA Cup runs as well, but not the quarterfinals for a non-league side, in which he did. I just think it's been a little bit of time now since it happened. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably put him in decent as well, but I wouldn't be surprised coming into the season if we're saying he should be League One quality because of the squad he's put together and the potential of that Colchester side. So probably top end decent, potentially League One quality in the future.
Yeah, I'd say decent is fair. Obviously, as we say, it's been a while since he's really achieved anything of that's particularly noteworthy. But then I think Colchester are probably the dark horse for promotion this season, and you can see that from the business they've done and the sort of players that the Cowleys automatically attract just from who they are. I think there's a lot to be said for that, and I think a good season with Colchester would see him move back up into League One quality.
Yeah, and I can't really argue with that. I can't really argue. Yeah, he's a good manager. As much as I'm not his biggest fan. Let's say that. You can cut me earlier. I don't really care. Moving on to the next one. Lee Bell, Crewe Alexandra. Now, I feel like I've said it for a few managers, but I'll be the first to say I'm a huge fan of Lee Bell. He's a great bloke. He's played some nice football with his Crewe side with limited budget as well. Very nearly got them to League One to last season. They were pretty much in the playoffs throughout the whole way through, even in the top three race for quite a period of that season as well. And it's something like his first real spell of management. He proves that he can work with limited resources, which what Crewe have. With the greatest respect to Crewe, I think just from his showing last season, I think decent. I'd like to see him another year. If he can maybe have a sort of season like that again, then I'd think about having him a League One quality. I think he'll be a League One manager at some point, especially if he picks up how he did last season. But I can't see him anywhere else other than decent at the minute. I know that it's maybe an interesting one to say when you've sort of got more experienced pros like Danny Kelly, Paul Cook in there, and after one season. But I truly believe he deserves that recognition.
I also believe he deserves that recognition. At the end of the day, nobody expected Crewe to be in the playoffs. That they very much work on a limited budget. We're very conscious of that, and all the kind of other things in between that goes against a manager. And we talk about it when you talk unproven managers like Doolan. It could really fall flat on its face. And if you were talking last season, like at the beginning of last season, you'd be putting him in unproven. But what he did at Crewe, albeit it's only one season and this is his first real job, what he did was incredible. Nobody would have put Crewe to kind of what they did. And I'd agree also that even if he doesn't get promoted this season, if he has, almost that bounce back, contending for playoffs, maybe reach them again, I think you'd be putting him in League One quality just off the basis of if he had the resources available to him, he'd probably be able to push a team, within a top three race in League Two. But off of that one season he did, which was, again, remarkable in its own regard, for me, it's nowhere other than decent at the minute.
Yeah, I'd probably put him in decent too. Nobody expected Crewe to get to Wembley last season, and he was so close to being a League One manager that you can't put him in does a job. He has to be in decent.
Yeah, it's fair. I can certainly see the argument for decent. To be fair, I think personally, I would say does a job just because there's been a steady progression, but I know he's still not had that much experience, but he's still yet to really get something across the line to actually finish the project and get a promotion or anything like that. But I can appreciate that he's making that steady progression. I think another year I put him up towards decent for sure.
Yeah, I see what you mean when you say the steady progression. I actually think how quick it has done. And some of the football that Crewe I played on the last season was very good to watch. It did sort of peter out a little bit to the end of the season. I think it was more just tiredness, if anything. And then, we all saw what they did in the playoffs. So very nearly done that. Just beaten by in the end, a very good Crawley side. I just don't think it'll take much for him to be League One. if he can have another, if he can somewhat replicate, albeit I think it'll be tough. But this is Crewe. I think Crewe sort of do get overlooked every year, just because of somewhat like the resources they do have. I think if we can have anywhere close to having another season like they have done, there's no reason why he can't be a League One quality. I think he'd have learnt a hell of a lot from last season as well. And I'm really excited to see what he and Crewe can do this year as well. But yeah, I put him in decent. Not quite League One quality just yet, but there's definitely something there in which he can do in the near future. Moving on to the next one. Now this is an interesting one. Grant McCann, Doncaster Rovers, decent pedigree in the managerial game. Hull City, Peterborough, couple of promotions under his belt. Has a previous spell at Doncaster, in which in League One. I think it was League One. And I think the rise in the end of where they got to last season, where in February, March time, it looked at a period, it looked incredibly bleak for them them being in the thick of the League Two relegation fight. But that's sort of like the last 10 or so games can't be ignored as to how well they actually did as well. Just losing out to Crewe in the end as well. I just feel like they lost a little bit of steam. Certainly geared up to go again. They've had an impressive summer. I do think the experience of him does go a long way. He's definitely not in the bottom three categories. For me, it's neither decent or League One quality. And I think ultimately, as much as maybe the first half, the first 3 quarters of the season was not great at all, there's certainly arguments to be made that I think he can be League One quality. That's what I think anyway.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't even look at the 4, those kind of. It feels quite weird in the bottom 4 tiers. I only put him in League One quality. That kind of pedigree he has. He's managed in League One. He's managed towards that top end of League One and whatnot. And for me, what he did absolutely fantastically last season that I don't think many managers would do is albeit it took him 3 quarters of the season to find it out, he found the problems with that team. He was obviously he was still backed by the fans because they saw something within the football that he was producing, albeit it was coming out in very small glimpses and wasn't happening fluently enough.
They love him over there as well.
They believed in what he was going to be able to produce, and he delivered on it. And I think the business that he's made now is absolutely fantastic, and he's almost replaced those loan players that were so wisely recruited to get them playing the football that Grant McCann wanted to play. But like obviously we mentioned, they did run out of steam, but when you're playing 10, 11 games of that high energetic, exciting football, it's bound to happen. But for me, just off the basis of he's managed consistently and relatively comfortably in League One already, and for me, I don't see why Doncaster won't be up there again this season. And off of the back end of what he did last season, albeit you can't ignore that first 3 quarters of the season, I think he's a problem solver. I think he's definitely someone who will develop a really good project with Doncaster and will get them eventually towards where they were, that top half of League One pushing playoffs. For me, League One quality, like top end of it, quality manager, I rate him incredibly highly.
I'd probably say League One quality as well. I'm not as convinced as Keiron is, purely because of how bad they were for 3 quarters of the season. If he had that form in League One, he probably would have been sacked. But I still do think he's got the pedigree for League One manager.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I mean, he's been there and done it in League One. And yes, he's had that sort of blip to begin with Doncaster. But, we're now starting to see, why he has been up in League One all this time. And as you said, I'd be surprised if they weren't there or thereabouts again this season. So I think it has to be League One quality, really.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I haven't got much more to add, to be honest. It seems a lot of it. So, Grant McCann, League One quality. Again, it's a manager I do like. I'm going to try and speed this up a little bit because we've been going nearly an hour already. Fleetwood next. Charlie Adam. I mean, we all know Fleetwood last season. I think there was a bit of a mess on and off the pitch. A few managers, with something to do with their owner being arrested and for fraud or something like that. And they now find themselves in League Two. Charlie Adam is still relatively new to management. I think it's quite hard to judge him anywhere else. I think he's probably one that does have to go in unproven.
Yeah, I think he's got to go on in unproven, especially the fact that has he got a chance to manage in League Two yet? The fact that this feels like his first touch of League Two football, albeit it's not too different from League One. And that they gave some form of a credible attempt during parts of that League One season to stay up. I don't think you can put them in anything else other than unproven at the minute, especially if we're putting John Doolin in there, for example.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with unproven. He took over Fleetwood and he was their third manager of the season, and they looked like they were going to get relegated, and they did. So he probably has to be an unproven because he didn't set the world on fire, but no one really expected him to.
Where he just hasn't quite been in a job long enough to say anywhere else. I mean, based on the performance at Fleetwood, if you had to put him in one of the other categories, it would be Matt. But he hasn't been there long enough, and he hasn't really had a chance to make his mark properly. And now he's got a chance to turn things around in a different division and see how things go there. But I think for now it has to be unproven.
Yeah, again, can't really argue with that one. So Charlie Adam is he's going in unproven. I just thought it'd be a bit harsh going in there because of the fact that he hasn't been in management long enough. Since it's a big year for him and for Fleetwood, we'll see if he can live up to that challenge. He did sort of pick up a few results near the end of that, but ultimately not enough to save him from the job. So it's one that I'm intrigued about. I won't say I'm excited, but sort of intrigued about to see how he gets on over there. Gillingham, Mark Bonner, big fan. Straight away, big fan of Mark Bonner. I think it's clear, it's evident to see for the job that he did at Cambridge. Again, another one. Cambridge, no one expected them to go up the season they have done, and they went up quite comfortably in the end as well. With them having Paul Mullin in their attack that year as well, and he did a good job solidifying them in League One. He kept the first season, which I think what's good. Sort of summits all going on there, but I mean, Cambridge, I think, I think they were certainly not going to be pushing the high end of League One. They're certainly not going to. I don't think they were going to be pushing mid-table to be. I think them staying in that division was probably what they would have wanted, and he did that. And I think it just I think it got to a point with him near the end where it sort of did need freshening up again. It sort of got a little bit stale, but that's not a disgrace on the job he did there, because he did a fantastic job again with one of those with limited resources. I'm excited what he can maybe do at Gillingham. I think their big one is trying to find their goal scoring, which we know they can defend. Is Mark Bonner the man to really get the best out of him? Possibly. It's an interesting one, but I can't disparage the job he did at Cambridge. I won't put him in League One quality, but certainly I'd put him in decent, 100%.
Yeah, I entirely agree with literally everything you said. You can't discredit the job he did at Cambridge. It wasn't too long ago in retrospect of why we've been judging other managers for other things. But yeah, I think he's a lot more of potentially, albeit he's not normal attacking-minded coach, he's a little bit more of one than we've seen with past Gillingham managers, and the business he's made is very much suited to improve that attack of Gillingham. And I think he's almost similar to Grant McCann in that he identifies what's wrong at a club with a squad and he'll fix it. So for me, again, you can't put him quite in League One quality because he's not got the reputation of continuously performing in this division or even continuously performing, in terms of higher end League One. But yeah, decent for me. I think it's very fair.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with decent. I'm really excited to see how Gillingham do next season because they've got a really good squad yet again, and this time it's got more good attacking options, and that's what they've been missing. He has the potential to take him to League One and probably stabilise them there and probably establish himself as a League One quality manager. But at the minute, he's probably just decent.
Yeah, no, I think I'm all agreed as well, really. I think decent is fair for now. I think if Gillingham will go and get themselves promoted this season, he absolutely deserves to go up to League One quality. To go there and do it twice within relatively quick succession, I suppose, go from one job to the next. But yeah, no, he did a very, very good job with Cambridge, probably with fewer resources than he has this time around with Gillingham as well. So I'd expect him to do a decent job with Gillingham and then take them back up, but remains to be seen.
It does remain to be seen, but I think we're all in agreement that he's rightly so going in decent there. It's a big year for Gillingham, big year for him. But again, that job he did at Cambridge was very good, exceptional, in fact. Grimsby Town, David Artell is next. I think we should probably just touch on his time at Crewe. I think you mentioned, I can't remember who it was. I think it was Keiron. I think it was Grant McCann said that was he a builder? I can't remember. David Artell, I see as a builder. That's how he got his success at Crewe. It was years of just steady progress. It maybe took him a bit longer than expected, but we all know about Crewe's lack of resources. But he finally cracked it with a large part of that to some incredible some youth players that they brought up through the academy, the likes of Charlie Kirk, Ryan Wintle, Perrin G, Harry Pickering, all those sort of stuff. That's a truly incredible team when you look back and now and think about it. Had a season where mid-table in League One, again, fantastic for them, and it all quickly petered out in their second season in League One, where they went down with a whimper in the end. Had a little bit of time out, joined my team Grimsby in November last year. It was around November. We stayed up, I say unconvincingly in the end. He's, for me at the minute, if I'm judging his time on Grimsby, very hit and miss. If I'm going to be honest, it's big for him. I think he's got to start well this year because I think a few of the fans are very torn on him. Some like him, but I think some have already made their mind. So I know a couple of mates. I'm not going to obviously say their names, but it feels like they sort of want him to fail in a sense. I get not liking a manager, but to want him to fail, I think is ridiculous. I'll say that for anyone, but I think. He's certainly not mad. He's got pedigree in League Two. He's got a promotion out of this division, but I can't put him any higher than does a job. I think at the moment it's a big year for him this year. As I say, he's got a big first 10 games. I feel otherwise, I think he could be out of a job pretty quickly. The fans might turn pretty quickly. I'm desperate for him to do well. I quite like him, but I can't put him higher than does a job.
Yeah, I can't put him higher than does a job either. I do credit him as being that kind of project building manager, as you mentioned. It does take him time to get the best out of a team, and the way football works now is that patience is a virtue to some. You kind of don't see it that way when you want instant success. But I think he's if you give him the time, he won't send you down. He will continuously progress you, albeit it may take longer than you'd hope. I think he's a relatively stable League Two manager with that definite potential to go into decent if he kind of speeds up his processes of turning squads into that kind of fine wine, if you want to put it that way. Albeit it's not as easy as it looks. But for me, yeah, I think does a job kind of. Is the perfect kind of justification from it at the minute. You can't take what he did at Crewe and then ignore the season at Grimsby.
Yeah, I agree. He's got a really good pedigree in League Two, but like Jordan said, he does need to start fast. Otherwise, he probably will get sacked, and that'll be a big blow to him and his CV. And then he'll probably struggle to get a League Two job. So. Probably does a job. It's perfect for him.
you see, I actually rate David Artell really, really highly. Before we brought in Williamson, I actually wanted Artell.
It was always my pick from when we sacked Paul Hurst. He was always my clear pick. I'll say that now.
Yeah, he's as a project manager, he's exactly the sort of character you want. And I think for me, I would actually go decent. I know, obviously, it's been a while since the Crewe days, since he's had that success there. But I do think he's really capable of building something that's actually sustainable as well. And I think he can actually really help to push a club forward. And I mean, yes, you do have to have a certain amount of patience for it to work. But yeah, personally, I'd put him in decent, but I've been outvoted.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's certainly one that he needs time. There's no two ways about it. I just feel like how sort of his spell. I mean, it did sort of pick up near the end a little bit. It got a few results, but I think some of the results and some of what he said has sort of not put him in a good light with supporters. And I just think that he does have a lot of rebuilding to do quite quickly on that side, if he wants to be a success. But I'm under the impression that he does need time. But I'm just worried that he's already, to some extent, he's at a point where he's probably on the brink of no return. And I don't want to say that because I do actually quite like him, but I can see why people think that. But yeah, I can't put him any higher. For me, like I said, I can't put him in any higher than does a job. No, he's done decent at Crewe, but it's all about trying to. I say again, I sort of used the term a lot of this, but find his feet. I don't think it's been more true to him. But we'll see how we get on. I mean, preseason optimism is not exactly through the roof at the minute with the amount of injuries and transfers. We're still about 5 or 6 short, and apparently we're only going to bring like 3 in with, and they're all going to be loanees. Yeah, I'm not convinced. But that's for another day. So Dave Artell does a job. Simon Weaver, Harrogate next. Here's another one I like. I mean, from the job, he's built Harrogate to be a staple League Two side. And I do play some quite eye-catching football at times. I think you can't put him in there. No chance you could put him in there. There was at a certain point where they're pushing for the playoffs last year. You know what? I'm leaning towards decent. I quite like him. I quite like how he sets his Harrogate teams up. They're quite nippy on the eye. They're quite attractive.
I like what Simon Weaver has done at Harrogate. You know, he's been there over a decade. You know, the fans have backed him. His football hasn't been kind of caught up with the times like we maybe would have seen with John Coleman's football that, you know, what got found out and more consistently than not, he was being beaten. He's a really adaptable manager, and if you were saying, you know, he was at a club in League Two with bigger resources for this duration of time, he'd probably have them kind of top end of League One. The football he does play is fantastic. You can't put him in League One quality because he's not got that pedigree of being up there. But I don't think you can put him in does a job out of the way that, you know, he's done really, really well at Harrogate over a long duration of time. And I think what he's done is very rare. Because, like I mentioned when we were talking David Artell, patience is a virtue to some people, and you know it's really hard to come by with football fans. But the board have backed him, the club's backed him, the fans have backed him, and they're really reaping the rewards of being a really stable League Two side and being that exciting team every now and again that can cause upsets and can be within that kind of reach of playoffs. Whether it happens is a different question, given their infrastructure. But no, I really like him, and I think if you were talking, he was at any other job with more facilities and better resources, I think you'd be putting him in League One quality just off of that stability and that football he does provide. But yeah, decent for me.
I think it does help having his father as the owner as well. So
it does help, yeah. But you know,
as far as I'm aware, he's got the safest job in the league.
Yeah, I'd probably put him in decent as well. They're similar to Bromley in the fact that they're building something over a long period of time, and Harrogate are probably a bit further down the line. And we were going to put Andy Woodman in decent, and because Harrogate are a little bit further down the line, I would probably put Simon Weaver in decent.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I was kind of split between decent and does a job, but I think you guys have managed to convince me that decent sounds about right. There has been that sort of steady progression, and again, there's that sustainability there of Harrogate are still constantly growing. They're not really world beaters for League Two or anything, but that they're there and they're there to stay. So, and I think there's always the threat that they could always suddenly appear in playoffs out of nowhere. And yeah, I think as long as there's that progression, I think decent's fair.
Yeah, I don't think there's really too much for me to add with that. I think other than the fact that I think with the greatest respect to Harrogate, they're not the biggest club in the world. And the fact that they're now this staple League Two side with potential to grow and maybe go further. I mean, it's there. They've certainly tried. And there was a period last season where they were very much in the thick of the playoff battle. See, it can be done. It can be done for them. But I think for going on the last few years, I mean, they're a staple League Two side. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. And Simon Weaver does have a lot that he could be credited that for. So, yeah, I can't put him anywhere else in decent, and that's where we've gone for him. Next one, Mike Williamson and MK Dons. Now, we all know the football that Mike Williamson played at Gateshead. Incredible, attractive, great to watch, scoring goals, winning games, all that stuff. Got his big move to the EFL with MK Dons, who took a chance on him after Graham Alexander took there. And on the whole, I think you can see what he's trying to do. There's been obviously some iffy results, none more so than the playoffs, of course, but and certain that. But I think he was just trying to morph, just putting the foundations in place. I'm really intrigued to see what he does next year, and I think MK Dons, are one of the early favourites for the League Two title next year. And I think that's partly credit to him and the squad he's already had. I mean, the summer transfer window has clearly played a big part in that, if how he's recruited as well. Yeah, I'm really excited. For me, I put him decent. I think is another one that I think would have learned a lot from last season. And hopefully ironed out what the problems are. I mean, you're probably maybe going to get that with the start of the football, but I'm really excited to see what he can do this year.
Yeah, I think, for what was a first season, MK, it's not a bad season by any stretch of the imagination, I mean, albeit you'd maybe had put them to go straight back up being the potential strongest side coming down from League One last season. But at the end of the day, he got them into playoffs in what was a very almost 3-horse race top three push. And to be fair, I think the summer business he's done now, the recruitment he's made, he's identified the problems. We mentioned this last week when talking about the transfers, that they almost lacked that leadership to grit out results at times, and you'd almost felt when they'd gone behind, there was more likely than not the opportunity for them to go behind even further and not get to back into games and whatnot. So yeah, I think if you would have taken this summer transfer window away, if you would have ignored that, I'd probably for now be saying does a job. But off of his recruitment, looks like he's identified what has went wrong last season. Again, no more so than that playoff semi-final. I would put him now, in that decent category.
Yeah, I'd probably put him in there as well, purely because he hasn't got the pedigree of a League One quality manager yet. And it's tough because does he have the potential to be a League One manager? Definitely. His football's attractive and he nearly got the Barnsley job. There were certainly rumours going around. So he just doesn't have the pedigree yet, but he definitely could be a League One manager in the not too distant future.
Now, I'm incredibly biased, but I would actually say League One quality. Bear with me. So, I think with this style of manager, you get these young managers coming in, and obviously they come in with this attractive brand of football, but actually the ceiling for this type of manager is so high. You look at Liam Manning now up in the Championship, Luke Williams up in the Championship, Russell Martin up in the Premier League. It's a very quick progression for all of those names I've listed there, and I think Williamson will be the same. I think at a bare minimum, next season, I think he will be either a League One or Championship manager, whether that's with or without Dons. He's a fantastic man manager. Obviously, I do think there is, with these young managers, there is a sort of naivety that can come in with tactics, but then they automatically bring in teams around them that have that sort of knowledge, that they're the sort of coaching staff that they need to build around them to really have a strong sort of group and rise up the leagues together as one sort of coaching unit, I suppose. But for me, I think regardless of how things go for Dons this season, he will be in a higher division next season.
Yeah, and I can't really disparage that. I just think at the moment it's just slightly early to maybe put him League One quality. I think I personally need to see more. Just about.
Yeah.
I've got no doubts in my mind that he'll have a very good career in the managerial game. If he have the success that he had this year, which I think probably MK will get, he'll be a League One manager, that's for sure, 100%. And actually, if he can maybe carry it on, it will not be a big surprise if he is a Championship manager, in a few years down the line as well. But I just think at present, I just need to see a little bit more, and I can't really put him anywhere higher than decent.
I think the reason that we've put those two managers in the League One quality categories because they've got that experience and that heritage already under their belt of doing well. He doesn't quite have that yet. If you maybe asked us this question as recent as even next season, ask it this time next year, you'd probably be putting him up within the League One quality because there's no dispute his football is exciting and it's hard to beat on its day. But like Luke mentioned, there's almost that naivety every now and again of not adapting to certain situations and scenarios. I don't want to mention it too much here, Luke, but that kind of League One, League Two playoff, kind of those both legs, you saw that naivety to a degree where he didn't change all too much between that first and second leg, and it did get eventually caught out. But I agree with the way that his ceiling is incredibly high of manager, and if he can just get that. Even if it is, like Luke mentioned, that coaching staff around him that keeps him with that mindset of you can vary your team around and learns ways to adapt, which I think he will do in time. He'll be a League One quality manager, but for now, I don't think you can put him any higher than decent, really.
Yeah. Again, I don't really have anything more to add to that. So that's Mike Williamson in decent. Now we're going to go on to a good friend over here, and one that's not in our best books at the minute. After what I say here, it's probably not his fault. It was more their media team, but for the fact that it's the side that he manages. So of course I'm going to blame him. Derek Adams in at Morecambe. Now, big boo for the 15 transfers right after we posted that. It must have been about 20 minutes afterwards. Not impressed. But he's got good pedigree. I mean, we all know the job he's done at Morecambe. Safe, solid pair of hands there. Got them up to League One. Again, one of them against all odds. No one expected it. But he has had a couple of stinkers of jobs. I mean, I look at Bradford. I'm forgetting about the Plymouth Argyle job when he took them up in 2017 now, I think it was. But he has had a couple of stinkers, a couple of spells at Ross County. Might have been not be the best, but I think there's a certain limit with them, perhaps. As I mentioned, Bradford, very hit and miss. There's arguments to be made for maybe decent and does a job. The thing is with me with Derek Adams, I think I look at it there's certainly the pedigree to suggest that he can be decent. I think, it's one for when we maybe do our League 2. I'm sure we'll do some League 2 predictions before the season starts. But we all look at Morecambe as a little bit of a basket case club at the minute, and sort out their problems. And yet their business hasn't been the most inspiring. But I also think if there's a man that will somehow exceed all expectations there, it is Derek Adams. He knows the club well, and he's had a brilliant track record. But it's an interesting one because he's very hit and miss. He's also not the most likable bloke in the world. It's I think that's safe to say. I think it's one I'm sort of thinking of at the minute. But it is between decent and does a job. If I had my way, I'd put him in a separate category, to be quite honest, because I'm not overly massively fond of him. But it's one I do need to think of. But it's, for me, decent or does a job. I can't quite tell at the minute.
Putting away all biased, if I was to put all biased, I would have a tier below unproven. But very bitterly so. He's got a really good pedigree in League Two, albeit it's one of those promotions is under my team's expense. But at the end of the day, I think what he is, where again, I hate bringing up this analogy because I've already brought it up once. When we talked Michael Flynn and what he did at Newport compared to other jobs he's had that haven't quite went as well. At Morecambe, phenomenal. Took them up. If I'm not mistaken, he stayed the season that they also stayed up, if I'm not mistaken as well. So having that kind of, that experience is very nice. And for that job alone, which was it his first or second spell at Morecambe? It was his first one, wasn't it? Is this his third? This is his third spell now, isn't it?
I've forgotten.
Yeah, he's had plenty of spells at Morecambe.
Just missed them all at the minute.
He always comes back, but I'd like to say it was his first spell. But if you're basing it off of that, League One quality, no dispute, took them up, kept them up, beautiful, good job in that regard. You add the Plymouth thing on, albeit it was years back. If we're justifying, like Danny Cowley for what he did, you put him League One quality. But those other jobs in between, Ross County, Bradford, take him down quite a bit. For me, he is in between decent and does a job. Realistically, for this season, I think he has to just be under that regard of does a job. Because you wouldn't expect him to be in the best of situations with that playing team, given what's going on at the club off the scenes. But for me, for all it's worth, and for the fact I think he's been better as a manager for a club more times than he's been worse off for a club as manager, I would just about put him in decent. But I understand the argument for does a job.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I haven't really decided yet if he is decent or does a job, because he does get teams promoted. He either gets them promoted or does a really bad job or just quits, which he's tended to do recently.
Yeah.
I'd probably put him in decent, but I am torn.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd probably lean more towards does a job. You look at the longevity of his recent stints. He's not stayed anywhere for more than a year in recent times, and that for me, that is quite literally doing a job. You're there for a year and then you've gone somewhere else. There's no progression with that, which I think you need that to be able to put him into decent personally. But I can see the argument there. But for me, does a job would be about right.
Yeah, I agree with Jordan entirely in the way of if there was a middle category, he would be in there. And now that you've said that, I do want to put him down towards does a job, because he does. And these promotions were 2, 3, 4 seasons ago. Like, it was a good time ago. And I think when you're looking at managers and judging them, you have to look at what they've done pedigree-wise, but also their longevity and have they left clubs in better positions. And again, especially recently, he's not really done anything of that kind of note of pushing a club up trajectory-wise. And because we've put so many managers in decent already, I am going to drop him down if there's a job.
I just see the amount of managers in decent as well, and maybe it's sort of done a little bit more than what he has, especially recently. Yeah, I'm leaning towards does a job, but there is a fair point you can have him in decent, because I truly believe he is. I just think at the minute for where I think it just pretty much is. And as Luke alluded to, he is pretty much done a job at pretty much everywhere he's been, especially recently, where he's sort of just been there for a little bit of time, does this and he buggers off, which is what he normally tends to do. But he's at a club where he knows it. I think I'm looking more for the fact that just looking at Morecambe as well. But like I said, don't get me wrong. He's got great experience at League Two. He's a very good League Two manager. He's another one in which you know what you're getting from him. But yeah, I might have to agree. I think I might have to put him in does a job. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, like I said, there is a good argument to have him in decent as well. And to be honest, I won't really argue with it. You can quite easily put him there as well. Yeah, well, decent for not decent. Does a job for Derek Adams. Again, intrigued to see how he does this year with Morecambe. So you know what they're going through in a minute. Right, this one's an interesting one. Stuart Maynard in at Notts County. I'm not calling him Nicky Maynard like I did a couple of months ago. Keiron was there. Did a solid job at Wealdstone. Got them to the National League. Pretty much, I say solidified them there, although they very nearly went down last year. Took on the role at Notts County. It was a big shoes to fill from Luke Williams leaving to go to Swansea. And at the minute, I've got a hell of a lot of question marks over him still. They've clearly addressed the positions that they needed to address. But at the minute, I think the jury is still very much out for me on him.
Yeah, I don't think you can, again, we're basing it almost feels like we're basing these managers, especially in that decent category, of what they've done over longevity. He's not had that time, albeit he did all right with Wealdstone, albeit again it was divisions below. There are definite question marks over whether he can add that balance to the team, especially defensively, and he can make it more of a unit rather than let's see how many goals we could score and we don't care how many we leak in that regard. But I suppose it worked every now and again, but more often than not, it didn't. My kind of justification on it at the minute, and I expect this to change drastically as the season goes on, I'm almost saying meh at the minute. I am almost saying that just out of he didn't overly change too much of what happened at Notts from what Luke Williams almost laid down and left with. So for that, I'm almost saying meh, but I do feel it's harsh, but I cannot really, displace him between meh and does a job. For me, almost with Derek Adams, if there was a tier in between those two, that's what I'd be saying. It's very, very difficult to kind of judge, and I don't think he's been in the job long enough to almost say he's done a job, but you can't say he's unproven either. So honestly, for me at the minute, it's gonna probably be meh, but I also do feel that is quite harsh.
I'd probably put him in there as well, because the expectation when he came in would have been playoffs from fans and the board. So he didn't really deliver that job in a way. So I don't think you can put him in does a job because he fell below his expectation, and he's certainly not unproven. It is similar to what Stephen Clements did when he came in at Gillingham with an expectation to be in around the playoffs, and they sort of fell away unimpressively. So I'd probably put him in the same category as Stephen Clements in there.
Yeah, I'm quite torn on this one. I really am. He's got too much experience to be unproven or anything like that. But it really is just a difference between does a job and meh. I think he's got a really good squad. I really just want to be able to see now what does he do this season, because I feel like that's sort of what tips it. And And I think, if not to do well this season, you're looking towards top end as a job decent, but we haven't seen that yet, and we can't prove that. So I think for now, I'll just about have to say meh, because they underperformed towards the end of last season, and although their business has looked good, we're yet to see what that transforms to in terms of results.
I just look at the categories. Does a job. Yes, granted, he hasn't really been at Notts long enough, and even then, he's not got that much EFL experience. I mean, but then we look at unproven. He's not unproven. He's been at Wealdstone for quite a long time now, and has enjoyed decent success over there. But it's obviously making that step up, and he was there for the second half of the season, wasn't he? They've not really. I mean, we knew where Notts County's problems were last season. That was defensively. But even then, they didn't win many games at all in their season. From what looked to be, especially for the first half of the season, where they were pretty much in the top three battle, arguably, and the fact that, especially playoffs, how quick they fell away when he came in, I think is quite alarming. I think Notts County there's huge pressure on Notts and him, because Notts are not going to want to hang around in this division. Their owners are ambitious of going up. I do agree that putting him in there does sound harsh, but at the moment I see no alternative. I don't think he's been there enough to really say he can really do a job. And again, he's not really that unproven in terms of management. I know that EFL management and management are sort of two different things. They sort of are, really. It is a step up either way. I can't put him any higher than Meh at the minute. I just can't.
I liked the analogy that Jake gave of, basing it off of Stephen Clements came in with high expectation and obviously didn't quite achieve it. Maynard came in with that expectation of potentially, that problem of defence wasn't something that you needed to be a top tier manager to see. It was very clear and obvious that their problem was in the back line. So the fact it wasn't, albeit again he hasn't been at the job for too long, so you give him the benefit of the doubt, and the business he has made does look to potentially rectify it. But barely anything changed. And you'd argue, if anything, maybe the attack got a bit worse and it didn't become as effective. But I suppose you need to do that to almost balance the team out with the defensive abilities as well. So with the business he's made, it looks really promising, and that does look like it kind of does a job decent. But we're currently basing it off of, we can't base it anymore other than last season and what he's done beforehand. So yeah, it has to be for now Meh, but it's very easily able to change to does a job or even decent, depending on how this season goes.
I think we just need to see a little bit more, don't we? I mean, you mentioned about the defence and how everyone could see that. I was going to make a joke, but it might get me trouble, so I'm just going to leave it there. But no, we're going to go. So that's Stuart Maynard in at Meh. Again, it does sound incredibly harsh, actually, because he's not been at Notts for long. But again, I still have my question marks. I think rightly so. I think there's maybe a few from Notts, although their summer business does look encouraging, especially ironing out their main problems of what they had last season. But again, I think we just need to see more, to be perfectly honest. Who knows? He could probably push up there as the season progresses, but right now we can't really say anywhere else other than that. Next one, I believe that's Nelson Jardine. I think that one is for Newport. I mean, if you've seen his track, if you've seen what he's done, I mean, he hasn't half been around. He hasn't half been around to places for all these different types of experience in all these different roles. This is certainly one in which is probably the easiest improvement of the day. I just think he's dropping down to League Two. Am I right in saying this is his first proper managerial role?
Technically, it is his second. He was managing a second team in Portugal before coming here.
Okay, but I think the point still stands. we don't know what he's like, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Say the job he's done in Portugal may have been there, but we just don't know because we haven't seen him.
He wasn't there long in Portugal and unproven. I mean, we may as well just put him in a bloody unproven now. Like that is where he is at the minute, just out of regard. I think the thing that's really encouraging about him is that he's been at really, really top tier clubs. He's been at Leicester, Swansea, Olympiacos, etc. So my hope is that he's learnt from those managers and from those experiences, and he can take it into his own managerial system and game. It seems that he's almost solidified on what formation he wants to play, which is different. It's a 4-2-3-1, which is different to our usual 5-back. He's also picked up so many roles. He's been fitness coach. He's been head of youth development, assistant manager. So I'm hoping he can take those experiences and adapt them to his managerial CV and put them in place here. But yeah, you can't at the minute put him anywhere other than unproven. This is generally his first actual test of a management, because he wasn't at this Portuguese second side for very long at all.
Okay.
Yeah, he has been unproven because nobody knows really what to expect from him. Yeah. I don't see how he could be anywhere else.
Oh yeah, no, simple as that. He's unproven. There's no more to say on it, really.
Just think it's one of those in which it could be a masterstroke or it could be a disaster. I don't.
Yeah, there's no way. There is no way in between for me.
There's no in between. So I'm interested to see how that one comes off, but not really much more to say. To be quite honest, unproven. Now moving on. That's right. Darren Moore at Port Vale. Now, Darren Moore is a name that's been around for a little bit of time now. From his days at West Brom and his management career like Doncaster, at Sheffield Wednesday, more recently at Huddersfield before getting the job at Port Vale. I think he signed like a 5.5-year deal, which was just ludicrous for any club, let alone Port Vale of League Two. I mean, there's some good pedigree there. I mean, he took Sheffield Wednesday up via the playoffs a couple of years ago in eventually an incredible playoff run. 4-0 down at Peterborough, turned it around and beat Barnsley in the 120th minute, I think it was. I honestly don't think he's all that, though. He can maybe argue his League One quality, but I'd probably whack him in decent. I think he's another one that's sort of got something to prove, especially during his time at Huddersfield, in which didn't last very long at all. But I think that club at the minute is still a little bit, still trying to sort of find itself. And now they're in League One next year with Michael Duff there. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I can certainly see the argument for League One quality, because at the end he's more than capable of holding his own in League One. Absolutely, you can maybe argue he's probably better off holding his own in the Championship in some instances. I just think Huddersfield at the time was it looked a good appointment on paper, but I think he probably looked deep inside the club, probably weren't all that. I don't know. I've got something in this, but I just think with Sheffield Wednesday as well, they were cruising their way to automatic promotion. I mean, you look at Ipswich that season, you look at Plymouth. I mean, Plymouth rightly so won it. But they were miles ahead of Ipswich at one stage, and they just collapsed tremendously. But the way to sort of pick themselves up is something that you can't look past with the plus. I don't know. I can see the argument for League One quality, but I put him in decent personally. I just don't think he's a specialist, maybe what some are making it out to be.
It is difficult.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I think the difficult part for me is that he's not really stayed at many jobs long enough to almost judge what he can do for the longevity of a club. He's known to kind of jump ship at the first given opportunity, especially when he made that move to Huddersfield. I thought, looking at their kind of relative recent seasons, I didn't think it was going to be a good move. I didn't think he was going to be able to establish himself quick enough to get the fans behind him and whatnot. He didn't really have the players there, I don't think, to kind of suit the system, which is very high quality, in my opinion. It's very technical. It's quite impressive to watch sometimes. No more so than that dramatic League One playoff semi-final and inevitable final. His teams always somehow manage to find a way to do something, albeit that Huddersfield job almost, to me, felt like a disaster from the get-go. But I think, for me, given the fact he's been promoted from League One, I have to put him in, off of the basis of why we've put the other managers in League One quality. I can't put him anywhere other than League One quality. I understand the argument for decent because, you almost say maybe a bit of luck went his way with the playoff semi-final, and that they already thought, maybe Peterborough thought they were already cruising through, and they let the gas off, and obviously they did end up dropping out of the top two that season. But to be able to adapt and kind of overcome that deficit is something that you won't see many managers be able to pull off. And for an overall campaign in that League One season, it was really impressive, and he did all right, I suppose, at Doncaster, enough so to credit his move to Sheffield Wednesday and whatnot. But I think if he was, top end of League One again, I don't think you'd question it. So for me, he's League One quality.
Yeah, I'd have to agree and put him in League One quality. When he's getting a side going, he creates a side which is really hard to beat. My only concern with him is when it's not going his way and he takes over a side like a Huddersfield, it just doesn't go. It just never worked for him and didn't look like it was going to work. So if he gets him off to a strong start, he's definitely going to be a force, and that Port Vale side are going to be really tough to beat all season. But if it starts to go wrong, I do have slight worries about them, but I'd probably say he's a League One quality manager.
Yeah, personally, I would go towards decent. Personally, I do think that obviously he's had like these sort of negative spells or whatever. I feel like he needs this season with Port Vale where he actually just goes and romps the league with what is a very, very good squad. Like, there are no excuses, in my opinion, with the squad that they're putting together now. They have to be top three. If they're not, then it is a failure. I think I'd need to see that promotion to put him up in League One quality personally.
Yeah, like I said, I can see the argument for both. I mean, not disparaging his record, because there's some good moments in there, some good clubs, some good achievements. But there's just a part of me that's just not sure as well. I don't know. I mean, I'm happy to put him in League One quality because he has done quite a fair bit. There's just something about him to me that I'm just saying I'm not overly sure. And Port Vale, I think, is an interesting one this year. They've certainly recruited like they're going to go for it. We've been saying it. We've been really impressed by their quality, and we do expect them to be up there. And I think Darren Moore could be the man to do it. I don't know.
See, the thing for me, and this is why I lead, I kind of persuade him into League One quality, is that you can tell he's had influence at the business at that club. Immediately from the get-go, he's brought in, a quality player who, if he was playing lower-end championship football, you wouldn't question it, in George Byers. And he's got that influence to, have a player drop down 2 divisions because he has that faith in the project that this manager's building, and he's seen what he can do. That for me is why I've swayed him into League One quality. But the fact that, like Luke said, when it doesn't go right for him, there are certain circumstances where he doesn't overly fix it, and he's not able to adapt to it. I could understand that argument then for decent, but for me, I think that his pros and what he does well do outweigh the cons. And for me, I think this is, as of right now, this job can make him either solidified in League One quality or drop down. As much as he's not got that pedigree as such in League Two, I don't think you can, ignore the fact that he has been absolute quality in League One, and the fact that he's got that promotion under his belt, and within that technicality, then he's dropped 2 divisions as well. I think it is his managerial style will really, really suit this division, and for me, I don't see why. Not only are they getting top 3, I can't see why they wouldn't win the league. I think they've got everything in place to win the league, but yeah, I think this job is the thing that differentiates the two, and I think that's the reason that we're kind of dispersed as to whether it's League One quality or decent, because he's not got that proven track record in League Two, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm more than happy. It's up to you. I'm more than happy to put him in there.
Should we put him in top of decent?
And just split it in the middle.
Yeah, can you just make a split? I wish. Literally, if there was a division there saying almost League One quality, he'd be in there. But, you can't. I understand the justification for both, and I'm not mad either or what ranking he goes into.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting discussion, that one. I'll be curious to see what you think. I mean, we've got a lot of love from Port Vale fans for the rankings as well. So hopefully, I'd like to hear a little bit more what you think. So if you could let us know, that'd be great. Right, we're just going to try and quickly go through these last 4 because we've nearly hit the 2-hour mark, which we have been here a while. Carl Robinson.
Producer Ryan's going to be fuming with us.
I know the editing he's got to do. Bloody hell. No, Carl. I'm always fuming. Yeah, I mean, it does sound like you, mate. I'll be honest. Carl Robinson, Salford. I mean, had a long spell at Oxford. Am I right in saying he was at MK previously?
He had a very long spell.
He had a very long spell at MK. I mean, we all know that he's a good. He can be a good League One manager. Salford, I think, is an interesting job at the moment, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. But he definitely has the League One pedigree. I wouldn't say he's League One quality by any means. I may be debating if I don't know. It's another one I'm going to have to think about, I think. It's between decent or does a job.
My issue is he almost fits that project manager that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
What he did at MK was impressive enough to where you could credit him up in that League One quality category. Like you said, I think Salford is a very interesting job because it's very uncertain. It almost feels as to where that club's priorities are at the minute. It is very uncertain as to whether, they're almost thinking, all right, League Two for another season, it's our ceiling at the minute, or whether it is to try and bounce back from a poor campaign last time out. I'm personally gonna put him almost similar to what we said with Darren Moore. I'm gonna put him top end of does a job, but again, if there was a middle split category, he'd be the top end of that for me.
Jake, I'm just curious to see what you think, because obviously he's your gaffer. What do you maybe think about him for Salford for upcoming season, as well as what do you maybe think about him just in terms of in general because of what he's done beforehand?
I'd be biased and put him in decent because when he came over, we were an absolute sinking ship. Like Nicky Butt said, it looked like we were going to get relegated. And in first 8 games, he managed to turn it around and just keep us up. And then to the end of the season, it was just inconsistent and wasn't that great. But we're looking to build something with him, like you said, bit of a project manager. So hopefully, if we actually let him build something, which is what we haven't really done in the past, he should do a good job. but I wouldn't say League One quality yet, even though he has the pedigree.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're looking back historically, he would have been League One quality. He actually got us promoted into the Championship automatically with Dons. But that was obviously, roughly 10 years ago now, which is, can't ride on it for that long, unfortunately. He is a very, very good project manager. As I say, he managed to build something with Dons that, set the club up quite nicely for a long time. And you do have to have that sort of patience with him. I do think what sort of brought him down towards the depths of League Two is probably his stubbornness. He has this one system. If it doesn't work, you're kind of in trouble. However, I do think decent is where he absolutely belongs. He is a much better manager than Crewe Alexandra, and I'm absolutely adamant on that. So, for me, has to be decent.
Yeah, I think because you've mentioned Graham Alexander, it sort of swayed me a little bit to maybe put him in decent. I just think that League One experience, for the fact that, and he's got a promotion to the Championship under his belt, as you brought up, I think you can't ignore that. And I think that will go for a long way, especially for a club like Salford. We'll have to see what happens, because there's clearly a lot of work to do over there. Would you agree, Jay?
Yeah, with going with a younger model of signing younger players, which is certainly interesting, because we seem to have a mix at the minute. We want to have a younger approach, but then we keep signing older players. So it's going to be interesting, because obviously we're selling a lot of our key players, which when you're getting messages of we need external investment, and then you're selling all your good players for money, it's certainly interesting. And it'll be interesting to see how he does and what sort of happens over the next 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. But I can, Keiron put him at top end as a job. I can somewhat see the argument for that. I'm just trying to take into account what he did at both Oxford and MK. He was there for a while and enjoyed relative success, especially at MK. I mean, very nearly took Oxford to the Championship before Des Buckingham did it this summer. So, no, I'm happy to put him in decent. I think he probably does deserve it, because he has been around for a little bit now in an upper tier. Three more to go. Swindon's Mark Kennedy next. Here's an interesting one. I think he's not been, as a manager, he's not really been around for long. I mean, he was last at Lincoln. It just, I'll be honest, didn't really pull up any trees there. And it's sort of, it just seemed a bit of a, I don't know. He's an interesting one. I think it could work for Swindon, but I think at the same time, I think there's still quite a few problems going on over there. How much time you get and if he'll be back, I don't know. He's definitely not League One quality. He's definitely not decent. He's between does a job and meh. For me, it's as simple as that. I think we need to see a bit more from him of maybe what he can do at another club. I think it's interesting to say at Lincoln. At the minute, I don't know. I can see the reason why you could maybe put him there, but I think at Lincoln he basically just did what he said on the tin from the outside of it, and that was do a job.
Yeah, I think that's actually the perfect kind of justification for it. And I'm now realizing I'm at the bottom of the screen, so it's a different order now. But yeah, I agree with you entirely in the way of he did a job. He did what he set out to do, and it was kind of just keep Lincoln within that vicinity of being safe in their retrospective lovely division of League One. But yeah, I kind of understand the justification to put him into Mare. Almost why we've put Stuart Maynard and Stephen Clements in there, that he's not really done anything of merit and of note. But yeah, I think just based off of his very minimal reputation, I'd also put him in does a job.
Just before we go, I mean, Ryan, the Lincoln fan that's our producer, said he basically just fell out with a lot of the players when he was there, and he's putting them in the Mare.
See, I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? Because as obviously an outsider looking at a club, you almost, the only thing you justify is potentially his league position when you kind of look at it, and it wasn't inspiring, but it wasn't overly worrying. But if you're then taking the words off of of course, a Lincoln fan who says he's fallen out with the players, and potentially that may be due to the system, attitude problems, not being able to control a dressing room. That does lean him more towards May. And again, I want to move him again to May out of hearing that. Again, if there was an in between, that's where I would put him. But I don't know. I feel he's a relatively decent fit for Swindon. But if he loses the dressing room, it could almost be catastrophic. So for me, I'm actually going to move him down to May, just out of the way of just almost swayed out of the way of those comments there.
Yeah, I'd probably put him in May too. It's just not a very inspiring appointment by Swindon. If he does play defensive football, it is what they need. But his history just doesn't inspire me. So does he do a job? Yeah, but I'd probably put him in May.
Yeah, Meh is totally fair. I mean, what has he achieved really? If we're really being brutal with it, has he actually done all that much? I don't think he has. I think it has to be Meh. I mean, he needs a good season or two with Swindon actually sort of showing a progression that he can actually take that club somewhere. Then maybe reevaluate. But until then,
Yeah, I think hearing the stuff about his football's not the most inspiring and falling out with players, I don't think is a great thing to really look at. And again, I think we're referred to it a lot, but I think you do take a look at some of the others that are in does a job. Derek Adams has got a couple of promotions. David Artell's got a promotion. Andy Woodman's maybe not tested yet in the EFL, but there's certainly stuff to see that he can be a success. Ultimately, I don't really know that much on him, if I'm going to be honest. But I'm just looking at some of the other managers in there. Has he done more than what they have, or at least a similar amount? And the truthful answer is no. So, yeah, I mean, I've got no complaints putting him in there. It's one that again, another one that I'm really intrigued to see how it goes, especially with the what's going on at Swindon at the minute. I just don't know. To be quite honest, I'm not sure. I'm not sure about it. Look what happened to Lincoln so soon when he went. There you go. And it sort of just went well from there. Really, I hate the fact they're doing well. Right, two more. I'm going to sort of rattle these very quickly. Nigel Atkins, Tranmere Rovers. For me, he's League One quality. I don't really care what anyone says. I think his previous record, his management career speaks for itself. Southampton, I remember him at Scunthorpe there. Hull, he did a decent enough job. He's been everywhere, really, isn't he? And he's enjoyed some decent success along the way. And I think for Tranmere, I think we're sort of seeing, especially second half of last season, we can sort of see what he tried to do with Tranmere. And I think, we mentioned Colchester. They could be ones to watch out for next season. I'm really intrigued to see how they do with him in charge. But I'm a huge fan of Nigel Atkins. I'm a huge fan. Remember when he used to do those videos, like when he's out there walking in the morning, it's like, start again. And they was a stain in my life for fantastic. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I've got nothing bad to say about him. I personally put him League One quality. I think he's that good.
I'll put him League One quality as well. Personally, he's my favourite manager, and I think he is probably, in my opinion, the best manager in this entire division. And that's based off of, I suppose, track record. You're basing it off of his kind of recruitment policy and the style of football he plays. He doesn't have, when we, the way we kind of critique managers is, do they have multiple styles of system? Can they find ways to win in games that they may not be on top of, or it may not be suiting them? I think he does that superbly. And I think he showed that at, large parts of last season. If I'm not mistaken, he was there when they convincingly beat Stockport 4-0, and just out of that result alone, I mean, that was when that wasn't even when they were wrapped up with the title. It was very much still in the works, and there were still questions about how that was all going to go. So yeah, for me, he's my favourite manager in the division. I have no doubt that Tranmere will be in and about promotion, pushing again. It just all depends on whether they get backed enough to sustain him.
Yeah, he is probably a League One quality manager. He's the perfect project builder. You see what he did at like Southampton and all the other clubs he's been at. He knows how to build a side that can get promoted, and that is what you want in a manager, so he has to be League One quality.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's got experience at the higher level. He's got success. I don't think there's any way you can really put him anywhere else, to be honest. I mean, yes, he's only at Tranmere now, but, I think with him there, they become a bigger threat than they would be otherwise. So, League One quality.
Yeah, I can't really argue with any of those points. I think Keiron's put it well. I think with Tranmere, it's how much will he be back there? I think even that, I think he sort of proved, I think in the second half of the season mainly, that he can maybe do something that's maybe not got a hell of a lot of resources. I'm not sure. It may be harsh, but I think there's something that he could do there at Tranmere. I think, yeah, the early signs do look good. So, and we know what he's done beforehand with Southampton in particular. Yeah, I can't really argue for it. He's a really good manager, been around for a while now, and yeah, he certainly hasn't lost it, that's for sure. Last but certainly no means least is Walsall's manager, Matt Sadler. Now, I always love this because Matt Sadler managing the Sadlers, I just think he's always quite amusing. I'll always say that every time. I think he's just very in the middle. I don't think there's a lot wrong with him, but I also don't think there's a lot right. He's sort of similar. If we're looking at this, I think he's sort of similar to Johnny Jackson at Wimbledon. I just think he does a job. I think last season was steady. As much as it sort of got a bit nervy at times, he could have been sacked at one point. I think ultimately, he's just a solid pair of hands. That's what I see him. I don't think he's that bad for Mayor, personally.
No, yeah. First of all, I do love Matt Sadler managing the side. It's almost like when you had Arsene Wenger managing Arsenal, and then growing up, I always thought that Arsenal was named after him. I'm sure if I was younger, I'd be thinking Matt Sadler is the reason that Walsall's nickname is the Sadlers. But yeah, I mean, very much in my opinion, middle of the park. Yeah, I think he did get close, probably a bit too close for comfort when it came to being sacked. But he got backed, he got backed to kind of get them over the line and make sure that they were at least making somewhat of progression. I don't think Walsall fans will be too mad with how they finished up last season, being within that race for playoffs on the final day, albeit it was incredibly slim and they needed everything to go their way. The fact that they were in there, given past experiences of obviously Michael Flynn didn't work, and Matt Sadler, I suppose, steadied that ship in a way, but I don't think he's quite what potentially Walsall would need to take that step up and get back into League One. But yeah, very much a kind of middle of the park for me, stable enough.
Yeah, probably does the job. Did what was expected. They weren't expected to pull up trees and get the playoffs. They weren't expected to go down, and they comfortably were just mid-table. Had a short spell where they could have got playoffs, but did a solid job.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the other managers in like decent, and at that point he probably doesn't quite compete with them, but he's keeping Walsall ticking quite nicely. They're probably not gonna cause too many problems to the top end, but I mean, you never know. There's always an outside chance that they do. But yeah, for me, I think does a job would be about right. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, I can't really argue with that. I'm still quite upset about the 6-1 that they did against us on New Year's Day, but that was just more the fact that we were horrific defensively more than we were any good, with the greatest respect to Walsall. But no, I think they're just going around, just doing their business quite quietly. Actually, speaking of business, I noticed they signed Albert Adoma this morning. Now that's a cool one. I feel like he's been around for about 70 odd years now, but it's a good bit.
It's mental. I forgot what is he? Something along the lines of 300 championship appearances. Like, I forgot his name, and then all of a sudden it's just popped up. He signed for Walsall, and I'm like, hold on. He's one of those players of the. If you want to put him towards the streets, won't forget players, not out of the he'd be scoring worldies from wherever, but he was just always there, wasn't he? He was always consistent, reliable, and to be fair, I think he adds that bit of I don't know, maybe him, Matt Sadler can get something going to where they can push for promotion. You know, that is a statement signing within all credit, but I don't know. It'll be interesting, but yeah, it was really weird to see his name mentioned in League Two.
Yeah, and I think that experience goes a long way, but that's a topic for another day. But yeah, Matt Sadler in does a job. Again, don't think he's that bad for Mayor. I won't certainly put him decent. He's just very in the middle for me. We'll see how they do next year. We're sort of a solid mid-table finish. You know, the foundations are there. We'll see if he can build them on. But again, there was a point where he could have lost his job last year, actually. But no, we'll see how he does. But that's it. That's the list done. So we'll just have a quick recap, mainly for audio listeners. For the improvement section, it is John Doolan. I think that's his name. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah.
It's the acting manager, I forget. As well as Charlie Adam and Nelson Jardim. In Mayor, just the three names in there: Stephen Clements, Stuart Maynard, and Mark Kennedy. Again, Mayor's probably maybe a bit harsh, especially for Maynard and Clements' case. But you know, there's time to maybe re-erect that, and I don't know. Does a job. There is Johnny Jackson, Andy Woodman. I believe he will do a job there. In League Two. I'll be honest, I can't really see who that third one is. Yeah,
that's Michael Flynn.
That's Mike Flynn. Right. Sorry, Keiron, don't get annoyed at me. So Mike Flynn is in that. David Artell's in does a job alongside Derek Adams and Matt Sadler. Quite a lot in the decent category. Darren Moore, Graham Alexander, I forgot his name for a minute. Paul Simpson's in there. Lee Bell, and again, who's that one next to Lee Bell on the left arch? I missed him out. I can't see. That's Danny Cowley, of course. Yeah, no one else forgetting about him. I'm losing my mind here. Mark Bonner is that one who does the job. Yeah, Simon Weaver. Oh God. You can see what I'm like when I don't have glasses on for that, especially what's watching this. That is Robinson, but who's the one next to
Mike Williamson?
Weaver. That's Williamson. Oh God, this is going horrendously. Oh God, yeah. Please forgive me, but all of them are indecent, and the one in the 3 in League One quality, Paul Cook, Grant McCann, and Nigel Adkins. Forgive me, that was fucking horrific. The way that was worded. You can see my eyesight is not the best, but that's your lot. Yeah, it was really good fun to do. We've gone way over 2 hours in this, so if you're on YouTube or you're listening to this to any streaming platform, thank you very much for listening. I know it's been a long one, but let us know what you think about it. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, give us a comment to maybe what you think about it. If you're listening to on the likes of our streaming platform, Spotify and Apple, God knows what, please leave a rating. It does help massively. Big stuff coming for. We'll probably do another pod before the start of the League Two season. We probably will do predictions at some stage to see how embarrassing we all look come the end of it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Let us know your thoughts. The support on the first episode was incredible. So thank you very much for that. Yeah, I've got nothing to say. Anything you want to add for any more before we go?
I didn't expect this to be 2 hours. I remember going on to this and going, all right, this will be a 40-minute job. We'll quickly summarise it all and we'll be all right. But I think that, of course, tier lists and very much what we did last time out with the transfers is all opinionated content. You can agree, you can disagree. Of course, let us know your thoughts, whether that be on the YouTube comments or by tagging us on Twitter and all this other various stuff at Fourth Tier Fever. And I think we justified all of our opinions well enough. And to be fair, I'm very pleased with that list. Been an absolute pleasure to sit here for what is it, 130 minutes, something along those lines. Absolutely bizarre, but very, very good fun.
Yeah, just a load of people talking League Two. What better? That's pretty much it. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you guys for listening. If you're on the stream platform, make sure you go and follow our social media so you'd be the first to hear what we do. Like I said, big plans coming for the season. Once the season starts, we're looking forward for the season getting underway. Well, I'm not as a Grimsby fan. There's kind of bit concerns, but that's for a topic for another day. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's been Fourth Tier Fever. Thank you guys for joining in, and we'll see you next time.